Hello everyone, welcome to English Studio class. I am Professor Venkataramu, BR, Associate Professor of English. In today's video, we are going to look at The Monkey's Paw Detailed Summary, a mysterious short story by W. Jacobs. This lesson is specially prepared for BCom first semester students of Bengaluru North University. We will go through the story in detail, step by step, so that you can understand the plot, characters, and main ideas clearly. So, let us begin our journey into this mysterious and suspectful tale and see what happens when people try to change their fate. At the outset, let us know something about the author. W. Jacobs was born as William Weimar Jacobs in 1863 in London, England. He came from a very poor family. He studied at Birkbeck College, London, and began writing by working as a clerk. His first stories were published in satirical magazines like The Idler and Today in the early 1890s. His first short story collection, Mini Cargos, in the year 1886, became very popular and allowed him to leave his clerk job to write full time. Many of his stories are about sailors, ships, and life near the sea, inspired by his childhood. Apart from The Monkey's Paw, he wrote The Skipper's Wing, Sea Urchins, Captain's All, and Night Watches. He was known mainly as a comic writer in his time, but today he is remembered more for his suspense stories. Jacobs died in 1943. Famous authors like Mark Twain and G.T. Chesterton praised his writing. Let us move on to know something about the monkey's paw's background. The Monkey's Paw is a famous short story written by W. Jacobs, first published in 1902. It is about a strange mummified monkey's paw that can grant its owner three wishes. However, each wish comes with a terrible and unexpected price. The story teaches us that fate should not be changed and that our desires can have dangerous consequences. The story was first printed in Harper's Monthly magazine and later included in Jacobs' short story collection, The Lady of the Barge. It became very popular and has been reprinted in over 70 collections of horror, gothic, and classic fiction. Its lasting fame is because of its mix of horror, suspense, and supernatural terror. In the story, the White family receives the monkey's paw from Sergeant Major Morris, a friend who has traveled widely. Morris warns them about its dangerous powers, saying it has caused trouble for others. Still, Mr. White cannot resist trying it. What follows is a chain of events filled with fear, loss, and regret. Over the years, the monkey's paw has been adapted many times into plays, films, TV shows, operas, stories, and comics. Even today, the story remains a classic example of supernatural horror and read and enjoyed by generations all over the world. Now let's move on to the setting of the story. The time, it was early 1900s. The place was mainly the White family's small cozy home in England. The atmosphere was warm and homely at first, and then increasingly tense, eerie, and foreboding as the story progresses. Let us know the conflict of the story. The main conflict in the monkey's paw is man versus fate. Mr. White and his family try to change their lives by using the magical monkey's paw to make wishes. However, the paw is cursed And every attempt to alter destiny leads to tragic and frightening consequences. Friends, let us know the two important conflicts in the story. The first one is external conflict. The whites face the terrible result of their wishes, Herbert's death, grief, and the horrifying possibility of his unnatural return. And the second important conflict is internal conflict. Mr. White struggles with guilt, fear, and the temptation to use the paw again despite knowing its dangers. Let us move on to know some important characters in the story, The Monkey's Paw. There are five important characters in the story. The first one is Mr. White. The second one is Mrs. White. The third one is Herbert White. The fourth one is Sergeant Major Morris. And the fifth one is the representative from Ma and Meggins. Now, let us know briefly about each character. Let us begin with Mr. White. Mr. White is an old man and the head of the White family. He is curious and a bit hasty, so he keeps the monkey's paw even after being warned. At first, he does not fully believe in its magic, but he still decides to use it. This brings him sad and terrible results. He loves his family very much, but in the end, fear and common sense make him take his final decision. Let us move on to the second character, Mrs. White. She is Mr. White's wife, an old woman, but strong in her feelings and willpower. She loves her son Herbert deeply. After Herbert's death, she is filled with sorrow and pain. She becomes desperate to use the monkey's paw to bring him back to life, even though her husband is afraid and tries to stop her. The third important character is Herbert White. Herbert White is a happy and good-natured son of Mr. and Mrs. White. He likes to joke and often teases his parents. He does not take the monkey's paw seriously. Sadly, he dies in an accident at his workplace soon after his father wishes for 200 pounds, the same amount the family gets as compensation for his death. The fourth character is Sergeant Major Morris. Sergeant Major Morris is a tall and strong British soldier who has lived in India for many years. He is a friend of the White family and is the one who brings them the monkey's paw. He warns them about its dangerous magic and even tries to burn it. But Mr. White takes it from him. Morris is the one in the story who gives a warning to be careful. The fifth and the last important character is the representative from Ma and Meggins. The representative from Ma and Meggins is a polite but nervous man. He comes to the White family to tell them that Herbert has died in an accident with factory machines. He gives the company sympathy and also 200 pounds as compensation without knowing that is the sad result of the first wish. Let us know the plot summary. The plot summary can be made into different parts like exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. The exposition in this plot summary is Sergeant Major Morris visits the White family, tells them about the cursed monkey's paw and warns them not to use it. The reason action in the story is Mr. White wishes for 200 pounds. The next day, Herbert dies in a work accident and the family receives 200 pounds in compensation. The climax in the story is at Mrs. White's urging, Mr. White wishes Herbert back to life. That night, there is a persistent knocking at the door. The falling action of the plot summary is Mrs. White struggles to open the door. Mr. White makes a final wish. The resolution of the plot summary is The knocking stops and the road outside is empty. Let us come to the detailed summary of the short story, The Monkey's Paw. The story has three parts: part 1, part 2, part 3. The first part of the story I have given a title as The Visitor and the Talisman. Let us come to the beginning of the story. A cold night at Laburnum Villa. It was a cold and wet night outside, but inside Laburnum Villa, the atmosphere was warm and comfortable. Mr. White and his son Herbert were playing chess, while Mrs. White sat knitting peacefully by the fire. Mr. White, however, was not a skilled chess player and made risky moves, which made his son win quickly. While they played, Mr. White complained about how far they lived from town, calling it an unpleasant and lonely place. Just then, heavy footsteps were heard outside. Herbert recognized the sound and announced that a guest had arrived. Mr. White rushed to the door and welcomed a tall, strong man, Sergeant Major Morris, a family friend who had traveled and worked in faraway lands. The family offered him a seat and a drink, eager to hear his stories about wars, strange lands, and unusual experiences in India. The strange tale of the monkey's paw. As the conversation went on, Mr. White asked Maurice about something mysterious he had mentioned earlier, a monkey's paw. At first, Maurice did not want to talk about it, but seeing their curiosity, he finally brought it out from his pocket. It was a dried, shriveled paw of a monkey. Maurice explained that an old Indian fakir, a holy man, had placed a magical spell on it. The spell allowed three different people to make three wishes each. However, the fakir made it to prove that fate rules people's lives, and those who tried to change it would suffer. Maurice said Angel had used his three wishes, and his expression showed that they had brought him more sorrow than happiness. The first owner of the paw had wished for death in his third wish. Maurice warned the whites very seriously about the danger of the paw and even threw it into the fire. But Mr. White, curious and slightly amused, quickly took it out. Maurice told him to burn it again. But Mr. White refused. Instead, he asked how to use it. Maurice replied that the person must hold it in the right hand and speak the wish aloud. But he warned of the serious consequences. The first wish. After Maurice left, Herbert jokingly suggested that his father wished to become an emperor or to have lots of money. Mr. White, still unsure, finally decides to wish for 200 pounds, enough to pay off the house loan. He held the paw in his right hand and spoke the wish clearly. Immediately, he felt the paw twist in his hand like a living snake. Startled, he dropped it. Herbert laughed and said there was no sign of money, and he doubted they would get any. Mrs. White tried to assure her husband that it was only his imagination. They all sat quietly for a while, but the atmosphere became tense. The wind outside grew louder, and strange sounds in the house made Mr. White uneasy. Herbert joked again, saying they might find the money in their bed, guarded by something horrible. Later, when Herbert was alone by the fire, he thought he saw strange faces in the flames, the last one being monkey like and very frightening. Feeling disturbed, he reaches for water but accidentally touched the boy again. With a shiver, he wiped his hand and went to bed. Let us move on to the second part of the story. I have given a title for the second part as The Wish Fulfilled with Tragedy. A bright morning of disbelief. The next morning, the wintry sunlight streamed into the wife's family's breakfast room, making everything look warm and safe. Herbert laughed at the fears they had the previous night. The dried monkey's paw lay carelessly on the sideboard, showing that no one believed it had any real power. Mrs. White joked that old soldier like Sergeant Major Morris loved telling such nonsense. She could not understand how wishes could come true in modern times. And even if they did, she wondered how 200 pounds could harm anyone. Herbert laughed and teased that perhaps the money might fall from the sky and hit his father on the head. Mr. White, however, remembered Morris's warning that things might happen so naturally that people would call it coincidence. Herbert joked again, warning his father not to spend the money before he returned from work. And Mrs. White happily saw him off. Although she laughed at her husband's belief, she still hurried to the door when the postman knocked, only to receive a tailor's bill. An unexpected visitor. Later that day, while Mr. and Mrs. White were at home, Mrs. White noticed a well-dressed man standing outside, wearing a shinky silk hat. He seemed unsure whether to come in, walking away 3 times before finally opening the gate and walking up to the path. Mrs. White quickly hid her apron and invited him inside. The man looked nervous and avoided starting his business. Finally, he said he had been asked to call and introduce himself as coming from the company Ma and Meggins, where Herbert worked. Shocked, Mrs. White immediately asked if anything had happened to her son. Mr. White tried to calm her and said they should not jump to conclusions. But the visitor's uneasy manner made her fear the worst. When asked directly, the man admitted Herbert had been badly hurt, but was not in any pain. At first, Mrs. White thanked God for that. But suddenly she realized the truth. Herbert was dead. She clutched her husband's hand in the silent grief. The terrible news. The visitor finally explained that Herbert had been caught in the machinery at work. Mr. White repeated the words in shock, staring blankly out the window. Holding his wife's trembling hand, he softly said Herbert was their only child, and that losing him was unbearably hard. The visitor expressed the company's sympathy, explained that he was only carrying out orders. He added that Moe and Meggins accepted no legal responsibility for Herbert's death, but wished to give the family a sum of money in recognition of his service. Mr. White, horrified, asked how much they were offering. The man answered, 200 pounds. The exact amount Mr. White had wished for the night before. At that moment, Mrs. White screamed, and Mr. White, pale and trembling, reached out blindly like a man who had lost his sight before collapsing to the floor unconscious. The room fell silent. except for the heavy weight of their grief and the unspoken connection between the wish and its cruel price. Let us come to the part 3 of the short story. I have given the title for this part 3 as The Second and Third Wishes. A week of silent grief. In a large newly built cemetery 2 miles away, the old white couple buried their only son Herbert. When they returned home, the house felt heavy with shadows and silence. Everything had happened so quickly that they could hardly believe it was real. At first, they kept expecting something more to happen, something that might ease the terrible weight of grief on their old hearts. However, as the days passed, this expectation slowly faded into a hopeless acceptance, the kind of resignation that people sometimes mistake for apathy. They spoke very little to each other, for they had nothing left to talk about, and the days dragged on painfully, slowly. About a week later, one night, Mr. White woke up to find his wife missing from bed. The room was dark, but he could hear her quiet sobbing near the window. When he asked her to return to bed, she replied bitterly that it was colder for her son in the grave. Soon after, she suddenly cried out in excitement. She had thought of the monkey's paw. Why didn't she realize earlier? They still had 2 wishes left. She wanted to use the second wish to bring Herbert back to life. The second wish, a dangerous decision. Mrs. White's request shocked her husband. He was horrified at the thought of wishing their son alive again, especially after knowing the condition of Herbert's body when it was recovered. But Mrs. White insisted, saying she did not fear the child she had nursed since birth. Finally, Mr. White went downstairs in the darkness to get the talisman, the monkey's paw. Fear gripped him at the thought that an unspoken wish might cause his mutilated son to appear before he could even leave the room. When he returned, his wife's face looked pale, expectant, and strangely unnatural. She commanded him to wish, though he hesitated, calling it foolish and wicked. She repeated her demand. Reluctantly, he raised the paw and wished for his son to be alive again. The monkey's paw fell into the floor. Mrs. White rushed to the window, watching outside with burning eyes, while Mr. White sat trembling in the cold. When nothing seemed to happen, he felt a sense of relief and went back to bed. His wife soon joined him in silence, both laying awake in the oppressive darkness. Then suddenly, a faint knock sounded at the front door. The last wish and the knocking at the door. The knock came again, slightly louder. Mr. White froze each other, but his wife instantly believed it was Herbert, her son. She ran towards the door, but her husband stopped her, begging her not to open it. She accused him of being afraid of his own son and broke free, hurried downstairs. as he struggled with the bolts. She called for him to help, but Mr. White desperately searched the floor for the paw. Outside, the knocking grew loud and urgent, echoing through the house. He could feel his wife dragging a chair to reach the last bolt. Just as she began to slide it open, he found the paw and made his third and final wish in a frantic voice. The knocking stopped immediately, but its echoes lingered in the house. The door opened, letting in a cold wind, and Mrs. White let out a long wail of disappointment and misery. Mr. White rushed to her side, and together they looked out into the quiet, empty road under the flickering street lamp. There was nothing there. The road was silent and deserted, as if nothing had happened at all. Friends, that brings us to the end of our detailed summary of the monkey's paw. We saw how the story warns us about the danger of interfering with fate and the unexpected consequences of our wishes. It teaches us to be careful about what we decide because every choice has a price. I hope this explanation has helped you understand the story better and will be useful for your first semester English studies under Bengaluru North University. If you find this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to English Edu class for more lessons and summaries. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video.